evening. My name is Jason Wallace. I'm the pastor of Christ Presbyterian Church here in the Salt Lake Valley, and we welcome you to another installment of the Ancient Paths. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to inform you that we meet Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. at 8630 West, 2700 South, here in the Salt Lake Valley. That's Main Street, Magna. We're currently going through the Gospel of Luke in our morning worship. We also have evening worship at 5:30 p.m. now as well in the same location. We have a mission work that meets Sunday nights at 6:30 p.m. at 1315 East, 700 North in Logan, and hope you can join us for that. We also have a group that is speaking with us about joining the OPC in Ogden. If you'd like some information on that, please let us know. Well, we have a debate coming up Saturday at 2 p.m. We're co-sponsoring it with the Atheist of Utah. We have done a similar debate in the past that was co-sponsored with the Utah Humanist, I believe is the proper term of the group. We have with us this evening the president of the Atheist of Utah, Mr. Joel Layton, and one of the participants, Mark Howsam, who is a ruling elder in our congregation. He is an instructor in philosophy at Salt Lake Community College and is also on the adjunct faculty at Utah Valley University. Mr. Howsam is finishing his PhD from the University of Wales and has participated in a number of these debates. We also have another one, before we get too far afield here, coming up November 7th. It's going to be in the Orson Spencer Hall Auditorium, which is where this is going to take place. This one's going to be Saturday at 2 p.m. Ours is going to be November 7th at 7 p.m., which is a Friday night. I'm going to be debating Martin Tanner, the host of KSL's Religion Today, on whether the LDS scriptures accord with the Bible. And admission to both debates is free. And so we hope that you can join us for those. Well, as I said, we have with us Joel Layton from the Atheist of Utah. Mr. Layton, very good to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here.
We're going to get to Mark in a few minutes here, but I want to just have a chance for you to introduce yourself to us. What is the Atheist of Utah?
Atheist of Utah is a nonprofit organization. We consider ourselves an educational group that pretty much just gets together, and much like yourself, we gather with people of like interests and beliefs and talk about those interests and beliefs.
Now, there's been a resurgence of sort of a militant atheism with, you had that in the 19th century with Ingersoll. Now you have Bill Maher putting out the movie Religulous. Is that the proper pronunciation?
Religulous, I think is how he pronounces it.
It's a movie that you actually have a link on the front page of your website to his discussion of it. Before we go much further, I'd like to actually take a look at the trailer for that movie and see some of the views that are being put out there. So if we could go to that trailer, I think that would be helpful.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 40 years since my last confession. We're making a documentary about religion.
Oh boy.
Why doesn't he just obliterate the devil and therefore get rid of evil in the world?
He will.
He will?
Yeah,
What's he waiting for?
I believe that God wants everybody to be free. That's what I believe. And that's part of my foreign policy.
You're a senator. It worries me that people are running my country who believe in a talking snake.
You don't have to pass an IQ test to be in the Senate, though.
So you would agree that even if 1 billion people believe something, it can still be ridiculous?
Absolutely. How we define what is crazy or not crazy about religions is ultimately up to how we define crazy.
You start disputing my God, and you got a problem.
Does that make me crazy?
Isn't that something called a Moshokodo Mazada?
Does that make me crazy?
I'm gonna go in the rapture, and I'm gonna come back on a white horse.
On the second coming of Christ.
Yes. Not just because you share the name Jesus.
No.
Gay Muslim activist, that is a very rare job description. You guys have big ones. Santa Claus can hit every house in the world.
No, I don't believe in Santa Claus.
Of course not. That's one man flying all around the world and dropping presents out of chimney. One man hearing everybody murmur to him at the same time. That I get.
I'm in the Vatican.
That's the Mormon temple behind me. Think that means some...
No.
No. I'm wrong about everything.
Religious.
God knows what could have been accomplished in this world.
Weren't expecting that.
Is that God?
That's the voice of God.
Is that God, Doc?
Now, is the group that you represent connected with, I mean, you had this linked on the front page of your website. Do you see yourself as part of that new militant atheism?
I don't think specifically. I still don't look at us as being that militant. I've seen the film. It's not a great documentary. It's, if you know Bill Maher, it's played more for laughs. He doesn't get really serious until the end, and then he goes a little bit over the top. But you know, I laughed all the way through it, and sometimes I laughed at Bill Maher, and sometimes I laughed at the eccentricities of people and their beliefs in the world, and I think that's what the film is trying to bring out.
Now, Bill Maher has done this at a popular level, but at the same time, we've had people that have been coming at it from academia. We have Richard Dawkins, who has written a number of books, including The God Delusion, that have claimed that religion is the root of all evil. I mean, actually he did a BBC series where he tried to identify religion as the root of evil.
Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, I mean, from my perspective, I think he succeeded. We have actually shown that documentary at our group and sat and discussed it. I think that I believe that religion has a lot of detriment to the progress of society, and has through history. That's a lot of what we believe. And I mean, if it had been me, I can't say that I would, if I could wave that magic wand and eliminate a religion in the world, I would do so. But I also do believe that the world would be better off without religion.
And so with Dawkins and others, you have people who claim that the Crusades is actually symptomatic of religion, that wherever there's religion, there's violence. And yet on the flip side of that, people that I've spoken to that are atheists, when I try to talk to them about the Soviet Union, which was purposely atheistic and tried to do away with what Marx had described as the opiate of the people, they killed far more people, were far more brutal. They killed somewhere around 68 million people. You have atheistic communism in Cambodia that within the space of a little over 3 years kills 2 out of 7 million people. 2 million people are slaughtered, all in the name of irreligion. So how is it that religion is the root of all evil if...
Well, I have to disagree with a lot of that, because I mean, Stalin didn't kill all those people because he was atheist. He happened to be an atheist, but regardless of what that was, he would have killed those people anyway. I think all those people were not annihilated in the name of atheism. I think the same things going on with your Cambodian stuff. I mean, they're not doing it in the name of atheism. They're not going out there killing people to wipe out religion.
They're bulldozing churches. They were locking up Christians in mental hospitals, saying that they must be crazy if they were religious. They viewed any kind of organized religion as a threat against the state. And I mean, they would have agreed with the basic proposition that was given a moment ago, that society would be better off without religion, is what you were saying. And yeah. So, I mean, that
I
was
think it
part
would
of
be
their...
better off if we did not have religion before, from the beginning. But to annihilate religion causes problems.
But do you admit that these are explicitly atheistic regimes that have been as brutal, if not more so, than the people that are often... I hear this pop apologetic for atheism. religion causes wars, religion enslaves people, religion does this and that and the other. And if we didn't have religion, then we'd be free. Well, Soviet Union promised freedom. They promised that they were going to evolve as a society, and were basically following Darwin at a social level. And therefore, there was no wrong in doing away with what was a threat to what they saw as impediments on society. Would you disagree with that? Or?
Well, I just think that there are just so many more elements, and I'm not a historian about the Soviet and Russian history and all that stuff, but there are just a lot more elements there than just the religious factor. That has to be looked at, the social, economic, and structure of the whole movement and everything like that had to do a lot with. Religion was not, or anti-religion or atheism was not at the forefront of all that.
Well, the claim, though, that atheism would have made things better in the experiments where it's been tried in the last 100 years, it seems to have made things worse, such as in the Soviet Union, such as in Cambodia or China. Can you point to anywhere you say that the world would be better off without religion? Can you demonstrate that in the empirical way?
Well, it's been said that religion can move mountains. I haven't seen it move mountains, but I've seen what it's done to a couple of skyscrapers.
And so you would say that is the nature of all religion, then?
I think it has the potential of being the extremist end of it and causing that kind of horrors in the world, yes.
And so but you would believe it would be illegitimate for us to turn to the Soviet Union and point out, the thousands and thousands of people that were tortured in mental hospitals because it was considered insane to be religious. You would say that that's not emblematic of irreligion, of atheism.
I would have to look back on that. I'm not aware of the vast numbers you're talking about. I think they're pretty small numbers. I don't think it even approaches what went on with the Inquisition and the Crusades and the witch burnings for how many hundreds of years.
So you believe that the Crusades were inherently evil?
I think they were. Yeah, I think they were a horrible thing, a black mark on all religion.
So at what point were the Europeans justified in fighting back against Islam? Islam had taken over all of northern Africa, had invaded Spain, was invading France. Charles Martel managed to turn them back, and then they began the reconquest of what had been taken over by the Muslims. The Crusades is part of that Reconquista, as it was understood. At what point were they not justified in retaking territory that had been taken over by others?
You sound like you're justifying a preemptive strike.
No, I'm saying that the Muslims didn't simply wake up one day in possession of North Africa and just wake up one day in possession of Spain. They started in Arabia. They quickly spread from Arabia. They took over all of North Africa. They came across near Gibraltar, took over all of Spain, invaded France, and then the nominally Christian nations, and I'm not, obviously every war involves human sin, but I get so tired of people expressing this outside of any context. Mm-hmm. Islam had taken over and had expressed their desire and their willingness to take over all the world. They invaded France. The nominally Christian nations fought back, drove them out of France, drove them back into Spain, began to drive them out of Spain. Then they began going back to areas that had been conquered previously by the Muslims. At what point do you think that it was evil and illegitimate for them to fight back? And I mean, should they have simply defeated them in France and stopped?
What was the Muslims' purpose?
Muslims' purpose was to take over the world.
Then we are in agreement then. Religion has a big problem there.
Well,
were the Muslims not doing it in the name of their own religion? Which religion has the better God behind them to go through and...
Well, you're arguing from the extreme. In our discussions before, you expressed that you're married. Would you agree that marriage has been a vehicle for abuse in some situations? That there have been abusive husbands or abusive wives?
Well, certainly.
Is that inherent in the system, or is that something that is individual within the people that are in that institution?
Yes, but I agree with that, but I'm not quite getting your correlation.
I mean, you're saying all religion is fundamentally flawed because of Muslims' desire to take over the world at the point of a sword. And I'm saying that's no more invalidating for all of religion than one husband abusing his wife invalidates all of marriage, all of the relationships between men and women. It's illogical to try to say that religion as a whole is responsible. I mean, one of the things in the Bill Maher preview that we saw there, we saw some nutty people. There are nutty people who are religious, and there are nutty people who are atheists. And to try to caricature people and say that this is a problem for all of religion because there's nutty people here, it's just not, it doesn't seem rational.
I still think that without religion, we'd be better. I mean, I'm not saying annihilating religion, because now you have the problem that you're going to have like the Muslims against the Christians in the Crusades. I'm not saying we can go out there and annihilate religions. Many people use it, need it, makes them happy. You know, maybe they use it as a crutch, maybe not. But
well, Richard Dawkins actually says that religion should be viewed as a form of child abuse, and the state should step in and prevent parents from giving religious instruction to their children, doesn't he?
You know, I'm in kind of agreement with that. I mean, I don't have children myself, but my father, probably one of the greatest men to ever walk the face of this earth, also an atheist, he taught me how to think, not what to think. And I think that is essential for all children. There aren't Mormon children. There aren't Baptist children. There are children of Mormon parents and children of Baptist parents. They're not born into that. We're all born atheists. Atheism is without belief. Once they're born, they become usually they become the religion of their parents.
Well, let me ask you this. You say the world would be better. You gave a moral judgment of your father. On what basis do you determine what is good and evil?
The golden rule came out long, long before Jesus. Seems like a perfectly simple rule. Communities have a Darwinian concept of survival. There's communities that would have permitted rape and murder and theft of their personal possessions and what have you, and all the things that are considered horrible and wrong. Those communities would not have survived because nobody would have wanted to live in those communities. So those people would have left those communities and gone to communities that has that natural instinct to want to be good to each other.
But by whose standard?
I don't think you have to have a standard. I don't have a standard. I don't do good for a fear of reprisal in an afterlife or a hope for a reward in heaven. I don't have to do that. I do it because it just absolutely makes sense.
But you're arguing in a circular fashion. You say it's good because it's good because it's good. It makes sense to you, but on what basis?
I don't understand why one has to have a basis. People come up to me and ask me, you know, they've even asked me, say, why don't you kill people? And I'm going, I don't understand that concept. People that tell me those kind of things, I say, if all that's keeping you from killing people, raping people, stealing and doing all these debauchery things is to go to church, I tell them, don't stand right here, go to church now. You shouldn't be standing here. I want you to go to church. I find it very hard to believe that any of these people that are totally convinced that the church that they go to and the belief that they hold is the only thing that's keeping them from doing these horrible things are totally, those are the insane people that they're talking about that they're scared of. I would fear that type of person that thinks that the church or their belief is the only thing that's stopping them from doing such evil things.
And Mark, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here. Do you believe that it is reasonable to simply say that obviously these things are wrong, and anyone should understand that these things are wrong, and everyone understands them, and they're just sort of a natural law out there, and that we don't need religion to actually have any basis for right and wrong? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think that I understand Joel's point, excuse me, in that there is, if you don't have religion, if you have an atheistic, naturalistic view, there's probably egoistic reasons. There's reasons for one's own happiness not to go and commit every crime that occurs in the world. But I think on a larger scale, on a more fundamental level, if there's no God, there is no objective value to life. There's no objective ideal for what we were supposed to do, therefore no duty. The only question is, what do I want to do? And that really dissolves morality into simply prudence, which will take you a little bit of the way, but I think it will not solve all moral problems, because there are circumstances where in a naturalistic world you can be prudent and do things that would be normally considered unethical. So I would say it's not a matter of, well, I'm going to go be a serial killer if I'm an atheist, but if I was an atheist, I would have places where I could cut corners. I would have situations where I could do things that were prudent, that would make me happy, and yet would be normally considered unethical. So I do think there's an ethical problem there.
How would you respond, Joel, to, say, Germany, 1930s, when they began a euthanasia program, as they called it, for people that were seen as useless eaters? Here the society determined that the mentally ill, those who were chronically ill, things like this, that they were an unfit burden on society, and that being good Darwinians, there should be the survival of the fittest, and that it is in the progress of the society, the progress of the race, by weeding these people out. I mean, they argued it in Darwinian terms over and over, that in other parts of the world, as they saw it, this would be natural. The weaker of the herd would be culled. How do you respond to a society that does that?
Well, that's a pretty grim part of mankind's history, and I don't think they were doing that in the name of atheism either. And they're really kind of wrong in the concept of that being any kind of a natural selection. I don't see it as being any kind of a natural selection. Not a lot of what mankind does is very natural sometimes.
But how do you morally judge them? How do you tell them that what they're choosing to do is wrong, when they as a society have determined that this is what they believe is good for the society?
But isn't it all going back to the golden rule once again? I mean, I wouldn't want to be treated that way. They shouldn't want to be treated that way.
And their argument was that the people were a burden on society. They were not pulling their weight, and therefore they weren't being treated in the same way that someone who was pulling their weight in society would. So they would say that it was apples and oranges in terms of a comparison like you're making.
Well, that certainly is extremist, but let's face it, we put a whole lot of people in jail for nothing more than smoking a little piece of hemp. The numbers of people that we have in our prisons today is I don't know the exact specific numbers, but certainly in this country, the ratio outnumbers most of the civilized countries in this world. And I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing to ourselves? Well, I mean, it's certainly not as bad as 1930s Germany by any respect, and that era is not and by anybody is going to choose as a model for Darwinism in any shape of the word there.
Now, you've said you believe that the state should actually view religious education as a form of child abuse, correct?
I would like to see it that way.
So basically, our concerns from the position that you advocate is that the state, by police power, by the force of arms, could prevent us from religiously educating our children or take our children away from us. What do you fear? What is your fear of religion that would merit that?
I don't have the fear of the religion. I don't even have a desire to go to the extremist of prosecuting you for teaching your children.
But if the state
your
views
beliefs.
it as child abuse, then the state has to act accordingly, right? I mean, if I'm burning my children with a hot poker or something, the state has to step in. That's child abuse. If the state views this as child abuse, then what other end could there be other than the state stepping in and, by the force of arms, either preventing it or taking my children from me?
Well, I think the first step to do is preventing it. What we want to do is educate the people in the way they should educate their children. I think everyone should educate their children like my father educated me. He didn't educate me to be an atheist. He taught me how to think. He encouraged me to go to church. Long after he was an atheist, he encouraged me to go to church, any church. He would drive me across town to go to church.
Now,
but he wanted me to find out for myself.
Do you believe that Christians have not been taught how to think?
I think for the most part, most of them are only taught what to think.
Isn't that very condescending and dismissive? I mean, you have, in our small congregation, we have a number of PhDs and PhD candidates. Many of our people, I think, have been taught more about logic than a lot of the standard PhDs have. I mean, actually, PhDs generally are so narrowly focused that rarely are they taught traditional fallacies, much less any kind of in-depth logic. It's a complaint I keep hearing, but it's one that doesn't actually fit. I'd like to turn to Mark here. Mark, Richard Dawkins has actually made some even stronger statements, hasn't he, in terms of his view of the intellectual caliber of religious people?
Well, I think he distinguishes. I mean, I think he would recognize that people can be duped, into believing things, even if they're intelligent people. So I don't know if I would say that he would say that every religious person is stupid, or has low intelligence.
Well, in terms of those that would deny macroevolution, with evolution being the source of that everything has evolved from inorganic matter, from a common beginning to all forms of life as we see now. People who actually disagree with that, how has he characterized them?
He did have a quote that is pretty notorious. He said, if you meet anyone who claims to believe in evolution, or claims not to believe in evolution, it's safe to say that person is either ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked, but I'd rather not consider that. I guess in throwing an ignorant in there, he avoids calling all religious people stupid, but I'm not sure how much of a step up that is, ultimately.
Joel, do you believe that that people can legitimately weigh the evidence and disagree with the atheist position?
I don't know. I mean, I can't say I agree with Dawkins the way he put it there. I mean, I know of a lot of very intelligent people. Both of you are very, I can tell, I know you as being very intelligent people, and you still maintain your beliefs. And I mean, personally, I don't understand that. But everyone that I have ever known that doesn't believe in evolution has been taught it by someone who doesn't believe in evolution. most of the people that are totally against Dawkins, and I say most, have not actually picked up one of his books and read it cover to cover. People that swear that they don't believe in the Darwin's The Origin of Species has never read The Origin of Species. Interestingly enough, most of those people claim to be Christians, and I find out that they have actually never read the Bible. I have read the Bible cover to cover. And in that same summer, when I was a kid, is when I read Origin of Species. I weighed the two. Like I mentioned before, I did not choose. Atheists don't choose to be atheists. They look at the evidence, they apply logic and reason, and they come to a certain conclusion. I think anyone that chooses, that believes otherwise, is actually choosing to believe things that are counter to the evidence.
And see, from the outside, the modern atheism, it's moved from sort of an agnosticism, where it's just claiming I'm not convinced by the arguments, to a more fundamentalistic view, where people who disagree must either be ignorant or stupid, or there must be some other problem there. I think that there are plenty of examples of people who do choose atheism, many times because they're looking for a way to rid themselves from any kind of constraints. In the same way that you alluded to the Muslim terrorist that blew up the World Trade Center as an example of religion. You can point to Columbine, to people who were hostile to religion, who were atheists. What was Eric Klebold, and I can't think of the other shooter's name. They were doing it in their express hatred of Christianity in particular. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, but before we do, I want to go ahead and open up the phone lines to callers. If you would like to join in the conversation, we're trying to cover a lot of ground here tonight, but we invite you to call in and join us. The telephone number is 973-TV20. That's 973-8820. And of course, you can call in and join us. We're interviewing Joel Layton, the president and director of the Atheist of Utah, and also Mark Housen, one of our ruling elders, who is a PhD candidate and instructor in philosophy. He is going to be debating Dr. David Keller this Saturday at 2 p.m. in the Orson Spencer Hall Auditorium at the University of Utah on the subject God and Politics. And the subtitle is A Question, an Unholy Alliance. And so taking the positive will be Dr. Keller, and then taking the negative will be Mr. Housen. Well, while we're waiting for some of our phone calls to make it through the system here, I'd like to ask you, you talk about weighing the Bible versus the origin of species. Mm-hmm. Where did life, how exactly did life begin then?
You mean from the Big Bang?
Well, let's just start from the development from inorganic to the first cell. How did that take place?
You just pretty much just said it there. I mean, I believe in that primordial ooze in an immeasurably number of millions of years ago, and all you got to do is add those three ingredients, those basic. I'm no scientist, but those basic, what is it, nucleic acids? What the word I'm speaking? I'm losing the word.
Amino acids?
Amino acids, that's the word I'm for. And umpteen million years, it's going to happen. I think we are still evolving.
Can you demonstrate that?
Can I demonstrate it? You bet I can.
How?
Just give me umpteen million years, and I'll show you it happen again.
So, but how exactly did it happen?
I
mean, you argue that you go from inorganic materials mm-hmm. to a living cell, mm-hmm. a self-replicating cell.
Okay.
How do you get there?
give me a couple of 100 years, and I'm sure science will come up with a test to prove in the laboratory how it's worked.
But you don't see one. But you don't have one now.
We have enough research and evidence to draw a conclusion. It certainly beats the alternative that some kind of supernatural magic force came down and went poof and brought it all here.
So you'll take some undetermined naturalistic explanation over anything that it would involve God.
Anything supernatural, yes.
In the movie Expelled, done by Ben Stein, it seems as if people, including Dawkins, will recognize the possibility of life having been seeded here from another planet, which would eliminate some of what they have as their difficulties because they can't explain either. But anything other than God, because God is ruled out a priori.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you believe that even though you don't know how it happened, a naturalistic explanation has to be it because there just cannot be a God.
Yeah, and the excerpt you're talking about from Dawkins was kind of taken out of context because they forced him to ask him a question: in what circumstances do you believe would supersede any other explanation of how this all started? And so he brought up the idea of the extraterrestrial, and so they went, Dawkins believes in extraterrestrials, you know.
Well, no, I qualified it. I said it's not that he says that he believes in extraterrestrials, but he would accept extraterrestrial, I forget the term they're using to it now, but...
directed panspermia.
Directed panspermia, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have you back on. I'm not including you enough. We have some callers with us. We have Mike from Ogden. Good to have you with us.
We on the air?
We are on the air.
Good evening. Yeah, I'd like to ask your esteemed guest, in the early 60s when the Bible was taken out of school and actually the Holy Spirit was not welcome there anymore, so it kind of took away the opportunity for the whole group to be followed in the school. Now we have rape, murder, abortion, condoms, drugs, and all these things in school. Whose fault is this? Is this the fault of the Christian Bible thumpers or atheists? Or who brought this type of attitude about in our schools? I mean, there's Los Angeles, California, a number of areas, 50% dropout rate. Whose fault's that?
Okay, I'm not sure. We're having some technical difficulties. Appreciate you calling in. The question is, since the 60s when the Bible was taken out and prayer were taken out of the public schools, do you believe that the absence of religion has made things better in the public school system with school shootings, with violence, with teen pregnancy soaring, with all kinds of other social degeneration? Do you believe that in spite of those things that this has actually been an advance?
Well, I would have to check on the caller's statistics because, I mean, he makes it sound like it's a lot more horrible than it probably really is. I mean, they talk about the mortality rate of mothers killing their children, and interestingly enough, the statistics back in the Puritan days were actually higher than they are today. So it's what influences what? I don't think the religion or absence of religion has affected either one.
Well, I'd like to see the statistics on that. I mean, it's easy to make the assertion, but I mean, we've gone from a culture of Leave It to Beaver to a culture of Family Guy and South Park. You believe that as America has moved away from a more Christian worldview, that it has improved the culture?
I think it's actually probably pretty much the same. I think that was my point with the Puritan. I think you had, I mean, we're only seeing the Family Guy on TV. We didn't see the Family Guy on TV in the 50s. We have Leave It to Beaver type families out there today, you know, particularly right here in Utah, certainly down there in Utah Valley. And we've had, back in the 50s, I guarantee you, we had the Family Guy type character back then. It's probably pretty much the same.
we'll have you back on sometime and deal with some of the specifics on that. We have Matthew with us from Ogden. It's good to have you with us, Matthew. Matthew? Hello? Okay, now we're trying. Maybe this will. Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, we're having some fun with our technical difficulties tonight.
Okay, well, first off, my question is addressed to Mr. Layton. And before I ask it, I just want to thank Mr. Layton for coming on the program tonight. And I really appreciate this dialogue and hope that this could continue in the future. But my question for you is, you made some statements earlier in the program saying that
Matt, can you speak up a little bit?
And also, a little bit after that, you talked about how your father was one of the greatest men on the earth because he taught you how to think and not what to think. And I'd like to probe some of the assumptions in those statements, go a little bit deeper. It seems to me that there's an assumption that truth is a good thing and that religion is a bad thing because it impedes men from seeking truth. Like we have some obligation to seek truth. But looking at it through your worldview, it seems that religion has actually conferred to the human race a very, very strong evolutionary advantage, seeing that all societies, literally without exception, are religious. And I can't think of one that is explicitly atheistic, except for maybe the modern-day college student. So in light of that, what makes religion a bad thing? What makes truth a good thing? Why should we pursue truth in the first place? If the survival of our species is all we're after, shouldn't religion be considered the greatest thing? And I'll go ahead and hang up and let you answer that question.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the phone call.
Well, that's a lot to handle in a single answer. Is religion a bad thing? I'm just saying that I think we can do better without it. I'm trying to recall all the points that he made.
You believe you have truth apart from any divine revelation. What makes that truth important to you? If it is truth, what makes it important to you? If the point of Darwin is that it's the survival of the race. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's been argued by Dawkins and others that there's a religious gene, basically, that that religion is part of evolution, that it has conveyed some kind of survivability in the human race.
Yes, I'm not sure even how to respond to that. I know I've kind of lost my train of thought. There are so many things in that question there, but he'd mentioned that my father taught me how to think, and I think that religion does not do that. I remember when I was just a young kid, I don't want to give away my age here, but I am, but there was a great doctor, his name's escaping me, but in South Africa that did the first heart transplant. Religions were up in arms about that he was playing God, and they were totally against heart transplants, and it was a horrible thing. Actually, at the one time, the Catholic Church came out against it and said that they were playing God. There was a response from not the Pope, but one of the cardinals below him, and they had a fit about it.
And so all religion then is indicted with that one condemnation from a cardinal.
Which religions should we filter out? I mean, there are religions that won't give their children a blood transfusion because it says so in the Bible. They can.
It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible.
But they've deciphered it, and in the name of their religion, and they believe in the same God you believe in.
Can I make a comment?
Don't, please, Mark.
Sorry.
If you join me.
No, I think the point that you're trying to get across is that there are a lot of different worldviews. There's a lot of different religions in the world, and some religions are as far different from, say, Presbyterian Christianity as atheism is. In fact, I would say that the Mormon Church, for example, in its metaphysical views of the nature of the universe, is actually closer to atheism than it is to Protestant Christianity. And so what we should, if you really want to look at it accurately, we should look at it as a lot of different worldviews that are very different all from each other. And so we can't simply divide it into, atheists on the one side and then all other worldviews lumped into one category called religion on the other, so that everything that happens over here is blamed all around. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in India, there are people who will go to the temple of the monkey god, and they'll take monkey dung and rub it in their hair. I view that as qualitatively different from a whole host of other religions. To simply say that either all religions are false, or all are equally true and you don't have any basis on which to differentiate between smearing monkey dung in your hair versus believing in the claims of Jesus Christ, that there is a fundamental difference there. And I think it's far too simplistic to simply say, well, religion condemned heart transplant. Well, that's like saying atheism locked up people in mental institutions, and now you're saying the state should view it as child abuse. Would it be legitimate to say that atheists want me locked up in an insane asylum when some atheists have done that in the past to anyone who was Christian? I mean, is that legitimate to say atheists want me in a mental institution?
Well, stranger things have happened. I'm not for the monkey dung churches, but from my perspective, I don't find them any different than most of the others. And I think my point was being that science is often impeded by people of a religious faith, whether they be a small faction or a large, whether the Pope standing up and saying that certain things shouldn't be done, like abortion or birth control, or even the wearing of condoms. Right now, the big debate about stem cell research. My wife has multiple sclerosis. She could definitely, probably, possibly have a cure from stem cell research, and it stopped because people.
What fetal cell stem research would have made her better?
Well, we don't know that, but it is.
What major breakthroughs have there been through any kind of the massive research that's gone into fetal stem cells?
Because there's not massive enough, because we can't get the federal funding because we have a president who talks to God and says that we shouldn't be doing this.
But now all the medical advances have actually been through adult stem cell research. What they've actually been getting from fetal cell research has been, I forget the technical term for it, but basically these monstrous growths. Once again, it's like your view of creation, of the beginning of life, that you don't know how it happened, but you know it had to happen in a naturalistic way. And that's not a leap of faith, but for us to say that there is a God involved, that's a leap of faith, and that's completely illogical. Why should my tax money be taken to cannibalize children? I mean, you are making value judgments that you're not basing on really anything other than your own desires and maybe the desires of some other people. You're upset that on the one hand you assign value to your wife's life. Mm-hmm. From a Darwinian approach, I really don't see how you do that with any kind of logical consistency, other than you just say it so. You're making a gratuitous assertion that she has value. But then you're saying that these unborn children that are being cannibalized for their cells, they don't have value in proportion. Or at least they don't have value in relation to your own wife.
And I agree with that.
You believe an unborn child has no value, but your wife does have value.
We're talking about the amount of stem cells that are smaller than the brain of a housefly. Yes, my wife has a lot more value than a couple of cells smaller than the brain of a housefly. by far. Only because you, in your religious beliefs, believe that somehow that little tiny cell has a soul.
Tell me something. What separates that? What separates a child at the point of conception from where you are now, other than time and nutrition?
Brain activity.
But time and nutrition bring that about a whole lot easier than your millions of years. But why does your wife's life have value?
Well, she certainly does to me.
Well, and yet that's rational, but the value that we would put on an unborn child, you would believe is irrational.
Well, that's because you keep talking about it as an unborn child. I'm talking about a handful of cells. I don't look at that as an unborn child. It hasn't become a child.
Then what differentiates your wife, who's a lot of cells, from fewer cells? I mean, when a child is born in this world, they have fewer cells than your wife does now. Does that make them less valuable than your wife? I mean, are we gauging it by number of cells?
You know, I mean, I also have like with the Terry Schiavo case, I have no problem with, once there's no brain activity, I don't consider them having the value that we should keep them on life support. We should pull the plug. There's brain dead. There's a certain point where in the fetus there will be brain activity or brain birth. Then it has become a human being. When it's just a couple of cells,
says you.
It's not.
Says you, though. Why should we listen to you versus someone who's religious?
Because you're basing it on a supernatural being that has no evidence. So we have our Holy Trinity in atheism. It's called evidence, logic, and reason.
But it seems that it all boils down to your own whims. That you're just making gratuitous assertions. Let me pull Mark into this.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, do you believe that there is a value that can be assigned to someone or something apart from some religious convictions? I mean, what I hear from a lot of atheists, and let me qualify this, I really appreciate the discussion, as we've said, because there is caricaturing taking place in both directions. And I think it's good to have dialogue. But Mark, do you believe that it's consistent to say that it's just obvious that something is so?
I think from my understanding and interaction with naturalistic, atheistic worldview, I think that a naturalistic worldview can say that people have value in the sense that other people value them or they value themselves. So like you're talking about your wife, and you value your wife, she values herself, other people value her. In that sense, she has value. In the sense of an objective value beyond the value that human beings put on somebody, no, I don't think that can exist apart from God. So basically what we're dealing with is a system of ethics that says there's a God who is the author of the universe, who has ideals and values that are objective and ultimate, that we then have a duty to look towards, versus a worldview that says there is no purpose for which we exist, there's no objective standard or ideal or value to which we are inclined, to which we have a duty to move towards, but yet as purposeless beings, we value each other. We need each other. We have human needs and desires that are fulfilled partly in those relationships with each other, and in that sense, we can be said to have value. So my objection would be, from a Christian perspective, it really amounts to just prudence. It amounts to I value my wife for the same reason I value anything else so if I happen to have a particular stuffed animal or something that I love more than another human being, and it makes me happy and I can live a happy life following that, there's no reason why I shouldn't. There's no inherent value.
Okay. I think it may be helpful to explain to you that from my perspective, if I were in power, I think that the general history of Protestant Christianity, which has not been immune to human sin any more than any other system has, but generally a person like yourself is not being compelled to believe anything. They're not being compelled to raise their children in in Christianity. They're not being compelled to do other things. There are certain things of being in any minority. We're in a minority here in Utah, all of us. We have to recognize that we're going to be affected by that majority to some degree, but I don't see that there's much for you to fear from a Christian in the world. Whereas what I hear from you is that you want to take our tax money to spend on things that we disagree with. You want to use the state to compel us. Oh, we're further along than I realized. We need to be wrapping up here, but I'd love to have you back on. I think that simply saying life came from nothing, simply saying something has value doesn't make it so. I think that you're standing in midair to some degree, and love to have you on to flesh that out sometime. We are drawing to the end of the show here, and so I want to invite you to tune in next week, and also we have our debate. Mark Housen will be debating David Keller Saturday, 2 p.m. in the Osh Auditorium at the University of Utah. Our church, Christ Presbyterian, meets at 8630 West, 2700 South. That's Main Street, Magna, 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings and 5:30 p.m., also in Logan. If you would like more information, check out our website. And so we wish you until next time, the Lord's blessings. Good night.